The RLCS World Championship is less than a week away. It will feature 72 of the best Rocket League players from around the world. Players who have put thousands of hours, countless years of their lives into this game. Yet, only 24 of those players will make playoffs. Only 6 will make the grand finals. Only 3 will be crowned world champions. And only 1 can be the best player in the world. Today, I'm going to be sharing my predictions for the top 10 Rocket League players after the World Championship. And only 1 will be the best player in the world. There are many great players in this RLCS World Championship, so many that I struggle to narrow it down to 10. And although this feels a little bit like cheating, I have picked out 8 honorable mentions today. First up is First Killer. He's an American player playing for FaZe Clan, and he has been leading his team in pretty much every stat category all season long. He is known to be one of the best players, if not the best player, in North America, but his team has struggled towards the end of the season, having a poor spring split. If they do bounce back in the World Championship, it'll be on the back of First Killer, a player who can lead his team to victory. Next up is Ryze, a Saudi Arabian player who plays for Rule 1, and was just recently named Defensive MVP of the Spring Major. It might be a surprise to not see him make my top 10, but despite being named the MVP for the defensive category, I feel like he has some stiff competition at this World Championship, including from one of his own teammates, who may be featured on my top 10. Next up is Tao, a Belgian player who plays for Team Liquid in Europe. He was again a strong candidate to make this list, however, he faced tough competition, including, similar to Ryze, one of his teammates. He has done quite well up till now, but he has some weaker moments, including at the Spring Major, that make it hard to solidify him into that top 10. I also have Cash, an English player playing for Moist Esports, who has led his team to a top 6 finish at the Spring Major recently. And he again is another strong candidate, but with some stiff competition, I couldn't place him higher than honorable mention. Next is Drafinho, a Brazilian player playing for Crew Esports, who has led his team on a turnaround season, where they started off missing the Fall Major, but then made both the Winter and Spring Majors, and now are here at the World Championship. Their best placement was a top 8 at Winter Major though, so I don't know if I could have him higher on the list than here. I also have Seiko, a French player from Team BDS, who was last year's World Championship MVP. Although he had a good season, it wasn't quite as strong as last year, and especially with some tough competition from his own teammates, I don't expect him to be a top 10 individual player, although I still felt he deserved mention here. Next is Radosin, a French player for Team Vitality. He, along with his squad, won the recent Spring Major, and although he played quite well, especially in the grand finals of that tournament, he's been a little bit outshone by his teammates. That said, if this were ranking the best dance moves, he'd probably be number 1. Yeah. Rounding off the list of honorable mentions is apparently Jack, an English player from Genji Mobile 1 Racing playing in North America. He's had a strong season, especially the fall split, where he was the MVP at the Fall Major. He's had a little bit of a drop since then, but he kind of bounced back in the Spring Major, playing very well. It was tough to place him, but I ultimately had to put him outside this list, as like many others here in honorable mentions, he faced some tough competition, including from his own team. A quick note before we get to the top 10. 90% of my viewers are not subscribed. It's completely free and pretty easy to click that subscribe button. It'll help me grow and it'll help you get notified when my videos are live. So please subscribe, I really appreciate it. Thank you. Starting off at number 10, I have CRR, a Spanish player for Complexity Gaming in North America, and he has an interesting story. Last year he played in Europe, and although he played across 2 different squads, the story was the same in all 3 splits. He would miss the first regional, getting out 9th to 11th in the closed qualifiers, and then make the next 2, sometimes doing quite well, placing as high as top 6. However, in all 3 splits across 2 different rosters, because they missed out on that first regional, they were never in the major race. That meant the highlight of CRR's season was qualifying for Gamers 8, a huge tournament in Saudi Arabia with $2 million on the line. And his team did quite well there. They got 2nd place, knocking out huge names like FaZe Clan. CRR made a huge name for himself individually as well, and he was one of the hottest prospects going into the offseason. That said, it was quite a surprise when instead of signing with one of the other European squads, he landed across the pond, playing for Complexity Gaming, a South American team that had moved to North America to play in the North American RLCS. The move has worked out for CRR, as although they had a somewhat rocky fall split, they've done incredibly well in winter and spring, most notably getting top 4 at the Winter Major. And CRR has been a huge part of that individually. At the Spring Major in particular, CRR averaged 0.78 assists a game, 2 saves a game, and had a goal participation percentage of 68.75%. He is a monster on the pitch. He's participating both on a stats level and passing the eye test. He leads on and off the pitch and helps bring a little bit of European flair to this Complexity squad. That's why he's deserving of the number 10 spot on my list. At number 9, I have Ryze, an English player playing for Team BDS in Europe. And he has probably an even more interesting story than CRR. Last season, he played for the fabled Queso and the Moist roster. The roster that got second at the Winter Split Major and then won the Spring Major. And although they lost at top 8 in the World Championship that season, their series against Furia is probably one of the best series of all time. A legendary Game 7 loss for them. And they still could have done quite well the next season. They were still one of the best teams in the world. However, Vitira chose to move on to a different team, and that left this Moist squad to pick up Astral. So now, Ryze was teamed with Joyo and Astral going in to that fall split. They got top 4 in the first 2 regionals of fall this season, but they got 9th, 12th in the 3rd regional, so they did not go into the fall major with high hopes. They should have though, because at the fall major they ended up getting 2nd. An incredible performance. And yet, Ryze still left the team. Yep, that's right. He got 2nd at a major this season, and then left his team behind. He moved on to Oxygen, teaming with Jorias and Archie, a team that many would have considered a potential super team. However, they ended up getting 3rd to 4th in all 3 regionals, which was still a decent performance. And then they went into the Winter Major, and they kind of bombed out by Ryze standards. They got 9th, 12th. His worst international LAN performance since the fall split of last season when his Queso squad didn't make the major. So he moved on again. Yep, he moved on to a 3rd team. If you're counting, that's 3 teams in one season, 1 in each split. This time he joins Team BDS. And if you paid attention to the Spring Major or Spring Split, you would know this part of the story. They got top 3 in the 1st and 2nd regional, 3rd place I should say specifically, and then got 2nd in the Spring Invitational, meaning that they were on a pretty high note going into the major, and they did quite well, getting 2nd again to the very same Team Vitality. And they could have won. They came in as the upper bracket team. They ended up losing both series to Vitality. Crowd was against them. All that said, it's been a good season, and Ryze individually has been a major part of that. A good split, I should say, as Team BDS's season before Ryze joined was quite poor, which is part of what puts Ryze on this list, as he's been on 3 squads, and he's kind of elevated them each time he joined. And unlike usual when a player that's this good leaves a team, he didn't leave his teams and then they bombed out. Both Moist and Oxygen have qualified for Worlds, so I feel he deserves this 9th spot on the list. At number 8, I have Chronic, an American player for Genji Mobile 1 Racing who's playing in North America. Last season he played for Randoms, a bit of a bubble squad that consisted of himself, Knight, and 2Piece. They did well in some regionals, getting top 8 in Winter Regional 3 for example, but other times they struggled to make it out of close qualifiers. It was a good team, but Chronic could do better, and everyone was interested to see where he would go in the off-season. People expected him to get a better squad, but they didn't know how good a team he would land with. It was a little bit surprising to see him end up with 2 European players, but when Nolly and apparently Jack moved over to North America, they decided to team up with Chronic, and after they got picked up by Genji, the rest is pretty much history. They got 2nd place in the Regional 1 and Regional 2 of Fall Split, but then capped off the split with a Regional 3 win. Then they won the Fall Major, and it really was like a historic run for this squad that changed regions, picked up pretty much a bubble player in Chronic to win the Major. An incredible story. But the story didn't end there. They continued to do well the rest of the season. Although not quite as well as their major win, they still made the Winter and Spring Majors, never getting worse than top 8. And although they had a relatively poor spring split by getting 5th place, they still managed to punch their ticket to that spring major with a tiebreaker win over FaZe, another team that has made this World Championship. This squad is legit, and Chronic is an integral part of that story. At the spring major, he led the team in assists per game and saves per game, and was also a leader in goal participation percentage. He's truly an all-around player, passing the eye test and the stats test. For all those reasons, Chronic is deserving of the number 8 spot on this list. At number 7, I have Oski, a Polish player for Team Liquid in Europe. Before this recent spring split in Zen, Oski and his teammate Atau had perhaps the best entrance you could as an RLCS rookie. Him and Atau turned 15 and joined the biggest brand in esports, Team Liquid. Then they went on to not only make that spring major their very first split, but get top 8 at it. A good international performance, especially for 2 rookies. Because of that great split, they decided to stick together with a Chronic their third for this next season, and they have done quite well. They've managed to make all 3 majors, getting top 8 or better every time, including a top 4 at the Winter Major. Oski's been a huge part of that, and although he's been neck and neck with his teammate Atau for most of the season, in the Spring Major in particular, he led the team in saves and matched his teammates in goal participation percentage. I think he's a huge part of this Team Liquid squad, and if they succeed at the World Championship, it'll be on his back. For all those reasons, I believe Oski deserves the number 7 spot on this list. At number 6 is Exotic, a French player for Carmine Corp in Europe. And his story is an interesting one, as although he was a staple of European RLCS Season X, he kind of fell off at the start of 21-22 season. He didn't make a regional until the spring split, when he was picked up by Semper, who had lost their star player Archie. The thing is, they were in a spot to make Worlds as long as they could hold on to the spot, and although they had some disappointing top 8s and a top 12, they still made Worlds. There they got top 12. A somewhat disappointing finish, but at least they were at Worlds and relevant. And perhaps this was what got Exotic noticed, that or playing in the Urban Series with Zen, who we now know is an incredible player. Either way, he got picked up by Carmine Corp, a French org and a huge rebuild, as they kept on only one player, Itachi, and picked up Vitira and Exotic to complete their squad. This rebuild was a massive success though, as they had an incredible fall major, including 2 second places and a first place. Getting top 8 in the fall major though was a little disappointing. No one would be disappointed come winter though, as they turned it around and not only got 2 wins in the winter regionals, but managed to win the winter major. And then most recently, in the spring split, they did good as well. All 3 regionals were top 4 finishes and they got 3rd at the spring major. A good season, but one that will leave this team hungry for more. And Exotic will be one of those players that is not only going to do well, but is hungry to do better, and we'll see how he can do at this World Championship. The reason he's so high on this list, in addition to just his team doing well, is that he's individually stood out. He led this team in the spring major in assists and goal participation percentage, and I'm sure he can do it again at Worlds. He may have some star caliber teammates, but he deserves to be among them, and he deserves this number 6 spot on the ranking. At number 5, I have Kalirs, a Saudi Arabian player playing for Rule 1 in MENA. Now, him and his twin brother turned 15 in the offseason, making this our first rookie of the list. It's interesting though, because although we knew Ryze and Kalirs would be good, there were a couple things we didn't know for sure. Which twin would be better? Now, a lot of people thought it would be Ryze, but everyone knew they were pretty neck and neck. The other thing we didn't know is, could they take down Falcons? The Falcons squad had dominated MENA since their addition to RLCS the entire last season, and everyone knew that these twins would be good, but could they do the job? Could they take down Falcons? Well, they answered that question with the very first regional of the season, winning a stunner against Falcons. That said, they couldn't pull it off in the entire split and ended up not making the fall major. Additionally, they couldn't make the winter major either, although it was much closer. Then it came down to Saudi E-League 2023, the biggest LAN in Saudi Arabia, and they beat them there. A huge win, a huge morale booster, I'm sure, after their disappointment with the winter split. So going into the spring split, they had their hopes high, and they did it. They managed to take down Falcons in the spring split and make the spring major. And what a time to do it, because then at the Spring Major, they proved they could take it to an international event and got top 4, only getting eliminated and losing to Team Vitality and BDS along the way, the grand finalists of the event. It's been an incredible run, and Clears was an integral, if not the main part of it. Obviously his brother played well as well, I have him as an honorable mention, Ryze, but Clears led his team in goals and led his team in goal participation percentage. He's been an incredible player and a huge part of their run, and that's why I have him all the way here at number 5. I expect he'll continue to be an integral part of their success at the World Championship. At number 4, I have Alpha 54, a French, American player for Team Vitality playing in Europe. His story is long and decorated, so I'll stick to his time playing for Team Vitality. He joined them in Season 9 and was playing with Fairy Peak and KDOT. They had a great RLCS X, but coming into the post-X era in 21-22, they started to not do so great. They made the Fall Major, but in Winter missed the Winter Major. That meant that they dropped Fairy Peak, replaced him with Redosin. Their failure kind of continued into Spring though, and they didn't make that major either, which meant unfortunately it was time for the other legend, KDOT, to leave the squad. They picked up Sizen in his place, but in an interesting move, they also picked up Zen in the offseason, even though Zen wasn't eligible until the spring split. This meant all 3 players knew there was one of their heads was going to be on a chopping block, so it was an interesting playing experience, and fans were genuinely worried it would tank the team, and their fears were almost realized, as in the Fall Regional 1, the squad didn't even make the event. They missed the first regional of the season. This was a huge blow. Not only did it ruin their chances of making the Fall Split Major, or so we thought at the time, but it also kind of tanked their season if they didn't do well. However, all the fears were alleviated when they not only made Regional 2 but got top 4, which meant that somehow they were kind of still possible to make the Fall Major. Those hopes ended when they got top 8 in Regional 3, but it was still a decent enough start to their season, and ended up making the very next major, the Winter Major, getting top 8. Then it was time for Zen though. So Sizen got dropped, Zen got picked up, and everybody knows what just happened. They had the perfect split, winning everything. And yes, Zen was a huge part of that, but it wouldn't have been possible without Alpha 54. And to his specific individual contributions, in the Spring Major, he led the team in assists and had the exact same goal participation percentage as Zen. So he is an integral part of the team, he is one of the best players in the world, and for all these reasons, I expect him to be the number 4 player after the World Championship. At number 3, I have Vitira, a French player for Carmine Corp. And Vitira's story starts the same way Ryze's did, as he was teammates on that legendary Queso and then Moist roster. But after they got top 8 at Worlds, despite still being one of the best teams in the world, he chose to leave, and in the offseason joined K-Corp, with Itachi and Exotic. And as I talked about in Exotic's backstory, they have done incredibly well. They managed to not only win the Winter Major, but make all 3 majors and get 3rd place in the Spring Major as well. It's been a great season, and Vitira has been the number 1 reason for their success. Although he doesn't always lead the stats, in the Spring Major he did score the most goals per game on his team, as well as have the most saves per game. And it's not just the stats, he passes the eye test. He is almost a one-of-a-kind player in his incredible on-the-pitch antics, his incredible play. He also has that desire, he has that drive to win, as evident every time he's either interviewed or just appears on camera during the World Championships. He has that drive, ambition, he wants to be a winner. And he is a winner. He has won multiple events, a lot of regionals, majors. He is the real deal, and I expect him to continue that high-level performance at this World Championship and come in at number 3. That's why I believe he's deserving of this 3rd spot. At number 2 is Monkey Moon, a French player playing for Team BDS in Europe. He's been with Team BDS for quite a while, being part of their legendary RLCS X run where they dominated Europe, and that success continued into the fall split of the 21-22 season, where he, along with Extra and Mark by 8, won the fall major. They kind of dropped off after that though, not having a great winter, so Mark by 8 left the team, and in his place they got Seiko, a young rookie. And it ended up being a good call, because although they didn't do too great in the spring major, they ended up winning the World Championship. And who wouldn't trade one major performance for a World Championship win? Monkey Moon was a huge part of their championship win, as he was defensive MVP for that World Championship, and so they went into the next season with high hopes. However, despite being reigning World Champions, they did not have a good start to the season. They didn't make the Fall Major, and they ended up not making the Winter Major either. This was majorly disappointing, as all three players were literally world champions, having won the last world championship. Despite being the reigning world champions, they did decide to drop extra, and Monkey Moon and Seiko picked up Ryze in his place. As I've already talked about when I talked about Ryze on this list, this was a good decision. They ended up getting 2 third places and a second place, securing a spot at the Spring Major, and then did incredibly well at the Spring Major, only losing twice to a peaking Team Vitality. Monkey Moon is a huge part of this team. To highlight that, he had the most saves for the entire squad during the Spring Split Major. He's an incredible player and will continue to be incredible, and I predict that he will be one of the best at this World Championship, to be specific, second on my list. At number 1, I have Zen, a American player playing for Team Vitality in Europe. And Zen has had an incredible story. He first started playing RLCS in this most recent spring split. Prior to that, he was ineligible to play due to have previously being served a 1-year ban due to playing underage. Which is an interesting note, he was playing in RLCS closed qualifiers and got, I believe, only 2 or 3 wins away from making RLCS as a 13-year-old. He was so young, and yet he was still good enough to be playing in closed qualifiers for RLCS. Yet, because he was underage, it did get a ban, and it took him until he turned 16 to play in RLCS. This extra time to develop ended up probably benefiting him. He would have succeeded either way, but it caused a lot of hype because he got picked up by Team Vitality in advance of his being eligible. Before the season began, he was picked up, which meant that even though he couldn't play in fall and winter, he was getting a salary and he was guaranteed a spot on Team Vitality, which surely was good for his mental coming into the season. And it kind of showed, because in a bunch of off-season, or off-split tournaments, I should say, in between the winter and spring splits, he did incredibly well. Both in 1s and 3s events, he was looking good. Then he comes into RLCS, and he does not slow down. He wins not only 1 regional, not 2, but all 3 European regionals. And yes, he's playing with great teammates in Alpha 54 and Radosin, but individually he is popping off. Then we get to the Spring Split Major. As I'm sure all of you know, he dominates there as well. They do lose to BDS in the upper bracket a bit early, but they managed to make it through that lower bracket, face BDS in the grand finals, and beat them 2 series in a row to win the event. Zen not only led his team in goals per game and led his team in saves per game, but he got offensive MVP for the event and the MVP of the Spring Major. He was best player of the Spring Major, as I predicted beforehand, and I truly predict that he will once again be the best player after the World Championship. That said, that does bring this list to a close, so if you disagreed about my number 1 pick or any of my picks, let me know in the comments. Nobody's perfect, least of all me, and I'd be interested to hear who you think are the top 10 players going into the World Championship. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.